Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a new release from Dapol. Just over 3 years ago, in 2020, Dapol released the loco you can see behind me there, the Great Western Mogul, and in 2020 that loco was brand new, it was a new-tooled model. Well, just recently Dapol have released a brand new batch of these Moguls, and there's one livery in particular among that batch that I saw at Worley actually, and I thought, you know what, this thing looks so awesome, I think I am going to pick one up and do a fresh review on it and see what it's like, and I have done. That model is now out, and it is this. The Great Western 43XX Mogul in the khaki livery, and this is the first time that this Mogul from Dapol has appeared in that livery, which is very exciting. So the latest RRP for these Moguls from Dapol is £181.39, and this is more expensive than in 2020 when they were first released. Back then, the one you can see behind me cost £159.95, so the price has increased by about 13% since 2020. However, if you take inflation into account, the price increase isn't as much as it should have been. If this had increased in line with inflation, it would now cost about £190. So while technically the price has increased, really this is now cheaper than it was in 2020, which is pretty good. And I bought this one from the Model Centre for £154.18, which again is about 13% more than the old one cost me. The other thing about the old Mogul I've got here is that the performance wasn't the best. It was nice and smooth and everything, but it was geared to run rather fast, and as a result the torque wasn't fantastic and the crawl wasn't really that impressive either. And I have heard that Dapol have tweaked this model to improve that. I don't know whether that's true or not though, so I'm going to look very carefully at the performance of this to see if it is better than the old one. So there's lots to see here, lots to investigate. Looking forward to this. I want to see if it's worth the money, see if it still holds up against newer models that have just been released, and really see how this shapes up. So let's get started. The latest batch of Dapol's Mogul. So the packaging doesn't seem to have changed. We've got the same Dapol box as usual, which is nice and sturdy, but it also doesn't show the livery of the loco. So I've still not seen that in the flesh yet, and I'm itching to get into this box to see if it looks as good as that sample I saw at Worley, which is pretty much the only reason why I'm doing this. I really did like the look of it. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the version I've got is 4S-043-008. It's the Great Western 43XX 260 Mogul, number 5322 in the khaki. And this can handle curves of radius 2 or broader. And with that, I think that's pretty much all there is to see on the box. So it's time to lift the lid and take my first look. I just love khaki locos. I've not got that many of them. There's 3 or 4 maybe in the collection, and every single one of them looks fantastic. So this was a no-brainer for me really. Anyway, we've got the full Dapol manual, so let's open this up and take a refresher. So a bit of history on the class, pause and read that if you'd like to. There's a bit about the specification. It is a relatively high-spec model for the price. Die-cast chassis, die-cast wheels, sprung-centered driving wheels, interesting, sprung buffers, pickups in the loco and the tender, brass bearings. It's also got the toolless DCC decoder and speaker fitting option, which is very, very easy. And at the bottom there, also the firebox flicker effect. So a very feature-packed loco for sure. Quick start, unboxing, accessories, etc. Yeah, it's talking about servicing, lubrication, attaching the tender. I'll show you that later on. Again, that's a very simple process. There's a diagram showing the toolless DCC decoder fitting. Nice and simple setup, and it does work very well actually. Removing the tender body, I think that's so that you can put an additional speaker inside there if you'd like to, etc, etc, functions, warranty. Okay, well, yeah, seems to cover all bases. Let's move on then and take a look at the loco. Now, from what I remember of the sample I saw at Worley, it's a very light khaki, and yeah, it really is. I'm going to compare this with some of the other khaki liveried locos I've got to show you just how light this is, but I really like that. can't really comment on how accurate it is, although I do trust that Dapol have done their research, but regardless of that, it just looks great. I really do like the look of it. Okay, so I can see we've got some accessories in the top, and we'll go over some of this briefly. So we've got 2 bags by the looks of it. First of all, this one with the little tool, that's what you use to pry the smoke box door off and then pull the drawer out if you want to chip it. And then we've got a pipe for the buffer beam, which you can fit if you want. Also, a second accessories bag with these. This is awesome. They don't look etched in that the number looks like it's just been printed onto the piece, but they will at least stand out more than just a printed plate on the side of the cab, so that is really good to see. Yeah, seems to be pretty feature-packed for a relatively inexpensive model. Anyway, let's take a look at the finish. Let's open this up. Let's see if this is a good paint job. Hopefully it is. Oh, it's so strange. It's really, really odd. But yeah, nice finish on it, actually. Yeah, nice and shiny, and I can see the safety valve bonnet looks absolutely tremendous. Electroplated, actually. Yeah, amazing. Anyway, let's pull out the tender and look at that to start with. ROD, look at that. What a colour this is. And it's a very, very heavy tender as well, actually. A lot of weight to this. And also noticeably, yes, separate from the loco. You just push them together using that drawbar there. So it is quite easy to sort of transport this loco around. You don't have to hold the tender with it, which is quite handy. But yeah, beautiful tender. Can't get over this livery. Truly unlike the other car keys I have in the collection. Yes, I collect car keys. Anyway, the loco. Yeah, decent weight to this. And look at this thing. Yeah, I really love this. It's a real sand colour, actually, whereas the other locos that are khaki are much darker than this. In fact, let me pull one in. Let me grab the Bachmann City class here. Look at that. They just could not be more different, could they? I don't know if I'd even call this Dapol livery khaki. It's a lot lighter than you'd expect. But yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not commenting on the accuracy of it. I actually do like the way this looks. But anyway, let me hold the tender next to it. That's what the ensemble looks like. Yeah, this genuinely will stand out from all other locos, basically. And I like it a lot for that. Anyway, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on these locos in real life, and then we'll take a much closer look at this loco, its features, and also its details. The 43XX was also known as the Great Western 4300 class, and this was introduced in 1911 to the design of George Jackson Churchward. In total, 342 were built over a 21-year period, ending in 1932. The design was entirely made up of standard parts previously manufactured for different locomotives, including the standard number 4 boiler with superheating, Saint class cylinders, and 31XX wheels. The design was so similar to previous ones that no prototype was actually required. They knew it would perform as intended, and so just built the class. And they were right, hence the relatively large number of locomotives built. They performed some 50 years of service doing mixed traffic work, and they lasted well into the BR era, with the final withdrawal not taking place until 1964. Only 2 remain under preservation though, while the rest were unfortunately scrapped. So there it is up close and personal for you, the new ROD Khaki version of Dapol's Mogul. And I think this is a really excellent model. It's beautifully presented at the right price, I think, and there's also some visible improvements over the original batch of these Moguls. For instance, we've got more detail picked out on this version. This pipework, for example, has now been painted, and it's also a good 6 to 7 grams heavier than the previous batch as well. 6 or 7 grams doesn't seem like a lot, but in terms of tractive effort, that can make a massive difference in 00, so it's heavier as well. It is about £15 cheaper than the Acura Scale Manor, which is perhaps the newest Great Western loco you can get, and I don't think that makes this a bargain. I think this should be quite a bit cheaper than the Acura Scale Manor, because obviously the Manor was larger and it also had the die-cast body. The body on this loco is mostly made of plastic, the boiler and firebox, those are plastic, and this weighs about 100 grams less than the Acura Scale Manor at 317 grams. The other big difference is the smoke box. The whole model has a lovely satin finish to it, but so does the smoke box. Accurascale's Manor had the matte effect on the smoke box, which was much more realistic. And in fact, I think they've ruined Great Western locos for other manufacturers who don't do that, because yeah, this looks noticeably too glossy now that I've seen the Accurascale effect. But otherwise, yeah, this is a beautiful model. So let's start by taking a look at the decoration. Really, really nicely painted, actually. It definitely looks yellow, doesn't it? My first yellow steam locomotive, I believe. But the number plate on the side of the cab, this is just the printed version. Really interesting to see the white with the black outline there. Again, that seems to be unique in the collection. We've got nicely painted buffer beams, as you can see, in the red as standard, and you've got the vacuum pipes which are painted as well. And there are lots of details that have been picked out. The cylinders have quite a few painted details on them, as you can see. Even the cylinder drain cocks have the ends of those painted. We've got the odd bit of pipe work here. This one under the boiler is a bit strange because it's not actually connected to anything, so that could have been a little bit more realistic. But across the model there's all sorts of different valves and things which have been picked out, most of them pretty carefully, although on some of them there is a little bit of overspray, so I would say that's something to watch out for. And then you've got the top of the chimney, which has the copper effect on it. This is actually a metal chimney topper, although it doesn't have a metal finish, it's just got a sort of painted finish to it. So it's not as good as the sort of raw copper ones, but it does look okay, that's a pretty good paint. And then the safety valve bonnet, yeah, this has the electroplated effect on it, which looks miles better. Now, the other Mogul that I had from the first batch, that livery wasn't supposed to have a metallic finish safety valve bonnet, so I'm not sure if the original batch had this effect where appropriate, but this one certainly does, and it looks wonderful as a result. We've also got the little whistles on here too, which I think are plastic, but they are, again, nicely painted. Let's take a look at some of the details on that note then. So we've got the wheels, which are supposedly cast, and they do look excellent, really nice finish on those wheels. And the coupling and connecting rods look nice and realistic as well. They also seem to be cast, and we've got a nice detailed crosshead behind the cylinders as well, which looks good. In terms of the buffers, these are made of metal, as you can tell, and they're also sprung, which is great to see. And then just above there, we've got the separately fitted lamp brackets as well, which are all nice and straight. And here's a look at the smoke box door, which has the dart separately fitted, and it's also nicely straight, which is good to see. We've got separately fitted wire handrails across the loco, which seem to be nice and straight, good quality. I like to see that. And there's quite a bit of detail across the running plate, as you can see. Lots of moulded detail in this riveting and such, and quite a few other components as well. And in fact, on the other side, we've got the separately fitted reverser rod, another fine piece there, and what looks like a little whistle or something on there. Not too sure what that is, but separately fitted and painted nevertheless. Between the frames you can see we've got some representation of the valve gear. This livery doesn't have that painted into the red like it does on other versions of this model, so it's not quite as noticeable perhaps as on those, but it is there, so there is detail between the frames. It's good to see. And I guess my favourite aspect of this is the cab. So we've got the glazing on the windows, a different cab incidentally than on my other Mogul, so there are some tooling variations by Dapol on this model, but it's the cab interior detail that is the most impressive. They've really gone above and beyond with this one. All the pipe work picked out, we've got lots of separately fitted controls and such, and the paintwork on the gauges has to be some of the best I've seen. This is improved on the previous batch, which didn't have as much. Yeah, a really, really amazing cab, and of course it does have the lighting as well, which hopefully we'll see when I give this a test. So as you can see, a really good quality model with not very many downsides really. I guess I should note this crack on the underside of the boiler, which is presumably where the chassis and the body meet. Yeah, that could have been disguised a little bit better. I think when you view the model from down low, that is quite noticeable. But other than that, and the odd little blip in the paintwork, it's a really nice quality loco. Let's take a look at the tender then, which is a heavy tender, comes in at almost 100 grams, and it's also nicely painted, so you've got the same yellowy khaki colour with the ROD lettering in white, this time with no outline around it, but I guess you don't need that because the lettering is larger. The underframe is nicely detailed as well. We've got full axle box detail, water scoop fitted between the wheels, and also brake rigging pre-fitted as well. We've got these little handrails which are actually not connected at the top, which is unfortunate because they're not sitting particularly perfectly. And the handrails at the back of the tender, these are actually not wire, these are just a single moulded part which has been separately fitted. And as a result, you can see where it's been cut off the sprue, and they're not quite as sturdy as the wire handrails would be. So again, that is something to bear in mind. We do have painted controls though, which are really beautifully presented and straightly fitted, and a very detailed coal load, which I like very much. Yeah, a lot of definition in the coal there, it looks very realistic. And then around the back, we've got more separately fitted lamp brackets, various details around the back, another detailed buffer beam with sprung buffers, and a kinematic NEM coupling on the back, which is very smooth and free. It's got great motion to it. And I should also mention how easy it is to couple and uncouple the loco from the tender. So obviously I've got them coupled at the moment. If I want to change that, I can just pull them apart and that's job done. And to recouple them, you just pop the tender behind the loco on a piece of track preferably, and then just gently push them together, make sure that they have engaged right, and then give them a good push. And that's it, job done. So it's very easy, like I said earlier on, to transport this loco around. So beautifully detailed, great livery. I love this livery very much. Do you think it's accurate? Do you think it would be this yellow in real life? Do comment down below. But for now, I think we need to move on to the part I'm most interested in, and that is going to be performance and mechanism. What's changed? Does it run well? And is it better than the original batch? Well, let's find out. So there it is, down onto the track, the new and improved Dapol Mogul, and I love this thing. Yeah, everything about this for me is really a massive thumbs up. And that goes for the mechanism as well. I've already done the initial performance test, and I'll show you that in just a second. But after that, I did a disassembly of the loco to see what the mechanism was like and to see whether there were any changes. So let's talk about that now. I have to be honest, I can't see any changes. I do suspect that there is a tweak to the gearing somewhere, but it's not something that I could notice with the naked eye from the gears that you can see. Anyway, let's go from the top. So loco driving wheels, they have wiper pickups on them, as you can see. And the tender wheels also have pickups, but they're on the tops of the flanges, which is quite an unusual design. There are some downsides to this design, and that is that the wheels will deliver any debris or dirt from the track bed straight to those pickups. And because the pickups are up inside the chassis like that, they're actually quite hard to access and clean. As you can also see, it adds quite a bit of drag to the wheels as well, so the tender is quite a difficult one to haul. The loco to tender coupling though is incredibly neat and tidy, with no visible wires going between the loco and tender, which is fantastic. The loco base keeper plate is quite easy to remove. The brake rigging is in the way at times, but if you're careful, you can get the base off. 6 screws, and this reveals proper bearings on the driving axles, so top quality as usual from Dapol, and just one axle driven, so nice and simple. Body removal should be largely unnecessary unless you want to access the motor, but here's how you do it anyway. There are 2 screws at the rear of the loco, one at the front just underneath the front pony, and then also to remove the body you have to pull the DCC drawer out, so you use the tool included in the accessories bag to pop off the smoke box door, and then you can fish around inside there to pull out the DCC drawer. And this is actually all you need to do to DCC fit the loco. You can see the next 18-pin DCC socket on there, so you just pop a decoder on that if you want to. And if you want to add sound, there is an enclosure here for a speaker, although unfortunately no speaker is included. I think these days, for this kind of money, a speaker on that board would have been nice to see, but no, you do have to provide your own. And then to finish removing the body, I'm going to leave the drawer out and then pull the body off. And this reveals the die-cast chassis, which is pretty nicely designed, it must be said. And on board is this 5-pole motor, which I've got to say does look the same as the motor used before, so I can't see that there's any difference with this, but it is a 5-pole motor, and it's got a flywheel fitted to it as well, as you can see. And there's also LEDs underneath the firebox too, so yeah, we sure do have full LED lighting in the cab. And then the gauge back to back comes in at 14.2 to 14.3 millimeters, which is pretty close to the standard, so no issues with that. So a great quality mechanism, very, very serviceable, very accessible, and if all you want to do is DCC fit it, it's very simple indeed. much better than having to remove the body. So massive thumbs up for that. Let's now jump back in time and let me show you how that first performance test went. So like I said earlier on, I think performance was the weakest aspect of the original Mogul I looked at. Very speedy runner, not much torque, not very powerful. Hopefully this one will be quite a bit better. So how does it run now? Let's find out. Forwards direction. Let's give it its first ever run. Here we go. A little bit of power. All right, well, it started beautifully smoothly there. Yeah, no problem at all with that. And like I say, this is its first ever run, so this will need a full run in before I give it a final sort of performance score. But straight out of the box, that's perfectly acceptable. In fact, it looks beautiful as it runs. Yeah, that's great. What's the gearing like then? Is it noticeably any different from the original? Let's go past at 50% speed. Yeah, I would have said, and it's going back a bit now, but I would have said that that is slower than the last Mogul I looked at. Is it any more powerful? Let me put my fingers in front of the buffer beams. Woo. Yes. Considerably more so. Yeah, the old one I don't think would have done that. In fact, that didn't slow down at all, really, with my fingers there. So the torque seems to be miles better. Miles better, actually. Oh, that's good to see. And firebox flicker. Yeah, that's struggling a little bit on low power. Yeah, not really engaging properly at the slower speeds, but when you turn it up to 50, yeah, then you get it, and it's great. Yeah, that looks really good. So a nice firebox flicker effect. Okay, one final test before I run this in. What is the crawl like? If the gearing has been altered to favour the lower speeds, then it should be better. But is it? Here we go. Ooh, it started really soon there. Let me be more gentle. Yep. So, having not seen the mechanism yet, I can't say for sure that Dapol have made changes, but based on the way this is performing, it seems very different. Let me just say that. So, either Dapol have made some really good tweaks to this, or I've gotten very lucky and I have a much better motor in this one. But no, this, to me, this looks like it's been sort of retweaked and re-engineered slightly. Yeah, that's miles better, and hopefully it will stay that way too. Fantastic. It's running incredibly straight out of the box. I'm really pleased with that. In fact, talked about the Acura Scale Manor earlier on. Well, this performance is just blowing the Acura Scale Manor out of the water. Performance way better than that. Right, so let's run this in. Let's see how it gets on around the track, and hopefully everything will be fine with that as well. So 50% speed, here we go. Alright, there it goes, looking amazing in that livery, and also look at that around the curves. Yeah, no slowing down, and we've seen quite a few locos released recently that really do struggle on these curves, slowing down quite dramatically. Well, this one's not doing that. And it's also running at a nice, smooth, slow, controlled speed, which is good. Slow speed can mean one of two things. It can mean either the motor is weak and underpowered, or it can mean that the loco has been geared sensibly so it just doesn't run too fast. Well, based on how well this performed under my torque test, I would say it's just well geared, which is great. It's a lot better than the last Mogul I looked at was from Dapol. So fantastic, looking really good. No problems, no derailments, no slowing down, nothing bad like that. Really impressive. So I'm going to keep this running in. I'll do 30 forwards, 30 backwards, and then when we come back I'll couple this up to stuff, make sure the couplings work right, and we'll see how well it hauls. So don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. Alright folks, there we go, that is running in complete, and yeah, no problems at all with that. Perfect at all times, never cut out, never really slowed down that I noticed, and the speed seemed to remain pretty constant as well. Now I have tested the speed of this thing now, and I can say for sure that it is much slower than the last batch of Mogul. So what I did to test this was I lined them both up on the track parallel with each other. I set the controller so that it was going to put the same power setting to each loco, and then I just turned it on at the mains and let them run. And as you can see, the old Mogul was much faster, and in fact when I cut the controller off, you can see just how much further that loco went. So some changes have been made. It might be a motor change, might be a gearing change, but this is now much, much slower, and it appears to have more torque too. At least it did when I first tested it. How is that looking now? Forwards direction, let's give it some. Yep, I mean, that does not look like a loco that's struggling, does it? And don't forget, it's, you know, a good bit heavier than the last batch as well, so that's a great sign. Let me show you the half power speed now that it's running. So yeah, maybe it's sped up a little bit during running in, but it's still much slower than the last batch, and therefore much more controlled, as you can see. Look how smooth it is. Beautifully smooth. And the crawl was marvellous to begin with, so I'll do that again in a second. And we'll see how that is now. Let's try again. Let me ease it up really gently. See how slow I can make this go. Probably very. There we go, it's moving. It's been a while since I reviewed the loco from the last batch, but I'm pretty sure it couldn't do this. Accelerate smoothly? Yeah, sure it can. And in reverse, is it as good? Let's try. I bet it will be. Yeah. Incredible. So I cannot fault the performance. It's running amazingly, which is good news actually, because it shows that any of Dapol's other locos that were underpowered or had issues in the past, it shows that they can be upgraded and improved like this. I mean, this is just faultless. I would not change anything about the way it runs. Yeah, it's fantastic. So, tractive effort, thanks to its improved torque and weight, is now 0.32 newtons, which should be about 21 coaches on straight and level track, and that's approximately 30% better than on the last Mogul. And this is only about 6 grams heavier, so the improvements to torque really have made a massive difference. And I've set up these coaches. These are the sort of World War I themed ambulance coaches, plus the Acura scale van on the back. So not a massively long train, but hopefully it will be heavy enough to demonstrate the torque of this loco around the layout and such. And I'll be watching very carefully for any slowing down. So with that, let's go and test the couplings and make sure everything's fine in that department. So here we go. Keep it smooth. And the control you get on this loco, even on analog, is just incredible. I mean, look at this. Look how precise you can be with it. All right, slow down. It's insane. It's really, really crazy. And the couplings appear to be perfectly functional. Pull away. Yeah, I just really appreciate the extra control you've got with this loco. I know some people say, oh, who cares if a loco can crawl? Well, I care, because this is great and much better than some others. Right, here we go then, hauling 4 coaches. Let's get started. Oh, I just love how gently these can start. Okay, let's go up to half power, because that is a sensible speed now. There we go. And keep an eye out on the layout for some other Great Western locos, and if you can spot them all, let me know what they are in the comments. On the actual main lines though, I've decided to run some of Dapol's other Great Western fleet, and on the middle line we've got the loco I've been talking a lot about today. This is the other Mogul, which, to be fair, even though it's not as good a performer as the new one, is still fine, and the sort of quality of the performance doesn't seem to have degraded too much over time, as I've noticed on some other Dapol models, although it is still quite lacking in torque, which you can solve by running it faster, but then it's a bit unrealistic. So yeah, much better now, definitely. And then on the inside line, I've got another Dapol Great Western loco. Dapol do love their Great Western, and this is the large prairie with a small passenger train. So with that, let's go and catch up with the new Dapol Mogul and see how it's getting on. Alright, here we go, curves coming up. Let's watch out for any slowing down. Yeah, really not much, if any. So, I don't know what Dapol have done. They might not have done anything. It might just be luck, I suppose, but this model is miles better than the one I tried from the last batch, and I believe they have done something to improve it, because it is much, much better. Torque, fantastic. Speed, much more sensible. Crawl, miles better. And it's still a beautifully smooth and reliable runner that looks, frankly, amazing in this livery. completely unique in that regard, actually. So yeah, I'm really impressed with this. Dapol do produce a good loco, that's for sure, and they've got some real gems now in the Great Western flavour. So yeah, love it, really do like this. For 150 quid, just over at the retailers, you absolutely cannot go wrong with this. Great idea, I think, to bring it back with a new batch, and the improvements are not just mechanical. Like I say, there are improvements to the detail and the paint job, and I think these make a big difference as well. So great work, Dapol, really impressed with this, and another gorgeous loco that has immediately become a favourite with me because I like an odd livery, and this definitely is that. Yeah, hopefully you can tell I'm really happy with this one. And now some ratings then on the latest version of the Dapol Great Western Mogul. Level of detail I've given 4.5 star. Now back in 2020 when I first reviewed this, I think I gave it the full 5. Today I don't think it's quite worth the 5 star. It's still amazing, don't get me wrong, it's got the fantastic cab, great livery, sprung buffers, loads of little details, even lighting, which is great. But it is left behind very slightly by a Curascale, for example, with some of the features they offered on their Manor. Like the matte smoke box is a good example, screw-link couplings, that kind of thing. This loco doesn't have those, so it can't get the full marks on detail anymore, but it's still fantastic, still well worth a look. Performance though I cannot fault, it's got to be 5 star for me. A marked improvement over the last batch of Moguls. So the crawl, can't fault it, really impossibly slow actually, very impressive, nice and smooth, plenty of torque this time, no slowing down on the curves, and a much more sensible speed too, so no problems there. Pulling power is quite an improvement as well. It's much more than the old Mogul from Dapol. I guess that's because of the slightly heavier weight and the better torque as well. It's actually quite close to the Dapol Manor in terms of pulling power, although nowhere near the Curascale Manor with its extra weight. But yeah, pulling power, for what these are designed to haul, no problem at all. Mechanism, I've given 5 star. Again, there is nothing to fault in the mechanism. Brilliantly put together this. I love the loco to tender drawbar. That's still a very innovative feature, as is the DCC fitting solution through the smoke box. Remarkably hassle-free and much better than having to remove the body. It's also got proper bearings on the driving axles, lots of pickups on both the loco and the tender, 5-pole motor, flywheel, modern Next 18 DCC socket, and even lighting. Yeah, fantastic mechanism. The quality is still really good actually, decently heavy, more so than before, die-cast running plate, well assembled, no visible glue, and very few issues in the decoration as well. Doesn't get the full 5 star because some of the handrails are plasticky and they don't quite hold their shape in some cases. In other areas they are visibly plastic and a little bit flimsy. There's also the odd issue with the precision of the paint, particularly where some of the details have been picked out. So for these reasons, it's not going to get the full 5, particularly when we've got the Curascale Manor with its die-cast body. This just has a plastic body, so I think 4 is the right mark on quality for this. Value for money then, I've given this 4.5 star. So the RRP is £181.39 or around £154 at the retailers. I think in a world where you can pay easily £200 for a model of this quality, the price and value here is really excellent. I do think that a Curascale give you a lot more for just £15 extra and their Manor, but then again this model runs better. Yeah, this is the better performer. So overall, while it might not be a 5-star bargain, the value for money is more than fair, so 4.5 star. Overall then, that is 8.81 out of 10, or a grade of A, the top I can give. Yeah, I think for the money this is a marvellous model. The upgrades are noticeable and well worthwhile, and I would say this is a great time to finally grab one if it's something you're interested in. Into the logbook we go then, and it is really close to the top, second place below the Rapido J70 and above the Kerno rail motor. Yeah, if you like the Great Western, if you're interested in the First World War, this is a fantastic loco to go for. Well folks, that will just about do it for this review. Thank you so much for watching, and if you've got thoughts on this one, please do comment them down below. What do you think about this livery? Nothing else produced in 00 scale really, as far as I know, has quite this shade of khaki on it. So what do you think about it? Do you like it? Do you detest it? Do you think it's accurate? Do you have reason to believe that it's not? Please do let me know. Or more broadly, let me know what you think about the Dapol Mogul. Do you think it's accurate? Do you think it's worth the money? What are your thoughts? Please do let me know. But I've given you my thoughts, very, very impressed, love the thing, and the fact that it works so well makes it even more lovable, in my opinion. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Check this out if you want. Can I recommend it? Yes, absolutely. I think with the improvements, this is one of Dapol's best. So, again, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, folks. You take care.